I have been kind of addicted to the habit of making my life hard, of suffering and struggling. This is a really common thing for a lot of us as women. Today, I want to share with you 3 really simple switches that I've made in my life and in my mindset to help free me from the struggle and just let life come easy. So let's talk about it. So if you're new around here, I'm Maddie. I'm so glad that you're here. I post videos every week about slow living and minimalism and how that all ties in with our feminine power. So if you're into that too, I'd love to have you subscribe. All right, so let's talk about the habit of making life harder for yourself. I'm going to share lots of very specific examples in this video of ways that I have done this, because it wasn't until recently that I realized that this was such a pattern in my life. But the thing that I've realized is that for a really long time, I've had this subconscious belief that if I suffered greatly for it, the dream, the goal, really anything, that when I achieved it, it would mean more. And I actually almost said the word received, and then I just realized that the word received in and of itself, to me, evoked feelings of shame and almost laziness. It was in achieving the thing for myself that I could feel worthy, like allow myself to enjoy whatever that thing was. But it was a trap. In the last few years, I've shared on this channel so many different ways that I have slowed down and simplified and started just relaxing into my feminine energy. And I share all that in hopes that you can do the same. And what I could not and still cannot believe is that on a deep core level, I was completely closed off to this idea of receiving, which in essence is feminine energy. And you know how when you start seeing something, you just can't help seeing more of it? So I started seeing this first in other women, how when they receive, the good keeps going. It's like they're multipliers in some magical way. You give women groceries, they turn it into a meal. When you give a woman a house, they make it a home. You give them sperm and they multiply it into human life. We multiply creative ideas. We multiply emotion and depth and ambiance and warmth in a room. We make everything bigger and better than its original design. I just had a visual of that like XX chromosome that's in all of us. After all, the X is the symbol for multiplication and we have 2 of them. Of course, in that same way, we can also make life multiplied in pain and suffering for ourselves and everyone around us too. Well, the owner or the neighbor just started doing some yard work right outside that window, so we're gonna move to a different spot. You know, when you go on vacation and you just have time to finally process like life in the past year, everybody talks about this fear of failure, but what I've really struggled in my life with is actually fear of success. And that it's another example of this very same thing. Only when I finally started slowing down and simplifying that my goals, like the things that were on my vision boards, started just clicking. And I was really surprised to find myself not reacting with excitement or celebration, but instead with panic. And I was recalling how I would pray and ask God to help me not just like declutter my space, but also these habitual fear patterns. And what I realized was that I was actually really scared of how meaningless life might feel when I wasn't in chasing, achieving mode anymore. Like it was a real identity that I was really fearful to let go of, and that I assumed would be really depressing to live without. Who would I be without all of these things that I'm working towards to distract me from who I really am? It was also a realization that I wasn't really getting my identity from God. I was getting my identity in being a hard worker, which is why it was so hard for me to let life be easy. It's always so crazy to me how interconnected like our inner work is, and I feel very vulnerable in sharing this, but I know that I'm not the only one that has experienced where when we're simplifying our space, when we are creating expansive time for ourselves again, to just be, to create, when we're quitting all the activity that's not really even producing anything, it's just keeping us busy and distracted, when we're not hanging around in a negative, stressful environment or group of friends anymore, all of a sudden we connect the dots on something completely unrelated It's like that fear of the unknown, and assuming that the whole point is just arriving at the end destination rather than continual growth, that God might call me to something else after that, that one thing might lead to another. Another real big fear connected with this for just habitually making my life hard was the self-sabotage of success, because I assumed that friends might reject me if all of a sudden I was living my dream life and everything was just coming to me that I had ever hoped for and dreamed for and worked for. You know, what crazy thing's gonna happen if I start to actually like myself? As much as I was desiring the things I was working towards, I was actually more comfortable with my current conditions. I wanted to stay stuck. So when I would start to have little glimmers of success, I would get completely spooked and just retreat. I would then experience writer's block, struggle with laziness, or just getting distracted on my phone. And this is why often when life gets challenging in the best way, when it's invigorating and we're on the path and it's clicking, that's why I think many of us start piling on more than we can handle, more challenge than is even necessary. And inversely, why for some, when they start to dip their toe into simplifying and slowing down and feminine energy, and it makes them actually see themselves for the first time in potentially a long time, stripped away of all the excess, it doesn't feel immediately refreshing. It feels strangely overwhelming. And so they back away and think, okay, this is not what I thought it was. This is not for me. Right here is where I think we can change the game. Just relax, add ease, allow ourselves to receive it, and become who we're meant to be, rather than always retreating when we get close and falling short and feeling exhausted. I promise if you're watching this video and you've been connecting with it this far, you are so much closer than you give yourself credit for. Like, you hear all the time how much potential you have in your brain and in your body, but we think like, okay, yeah, I have untapped potential, like a tiny, maybe just like a tiny bit of untapped potential, but I don't think we truly understand that we know less about the human brain than the stars in our known universe. When I say you can receive and multiply good things in your life, and it can bring forth restoration for creation, not just in your lifetime, but maybe for your legacy, and not just for your life, but for the lives around you. Let's get into the 3 simple switches I've made to exit this habitual pattern of making life hard and instead let it come easy. Number 1 is to create a safe space. Often I think when we hear things that are just like so simple and so common sense, it can be tempting to not take it seriously. But imagine for yourself for a second if you made it your job to create a safe and beautiful, nurturing environment for yourself. What would that look like? What changes would you need to make? Before you even take action on it, start to feel what it might feel like and let that be your guide. The reality is that feminine energy needs safety in order to thrive. Nothing will ever feel easy when your surroundings are just a constant mess. You will forever be on edge and feel like there's danger lurking around the corner. It will be stressful. By creating for yourself a space that does not induce stress, but instead induces your creative spark and your comfort and your peace. Another example of this is just no longer being available for negative self-talk. I talked about this in my How I Quit Anxiety video if you want to check it out. When I start to feel embarrassed or ashamed, I just remind myself that these are natural human emotions. Everyone feels them. I've felt them before. I'm gonna get through them again. And so I'm available for the emotions, but I'm not available for the negative self-talk that used to accompany them. Anger, overwhelm, shame, they're all emotions that every human has felt. And therefore I and you will both experience again, to be sure. But what I do have power over now, just by learning to be a quiet observer of my emotions and actually allowing them to run their course, in letting them come rather than fighting them, instead of reacting to emotions with negative self-talk, instead of reacting to emotions with binging a bag of chips or a bar of chocolate, I am going for a walk. I am scheduling a massage. I'm gonna go out for a pedicure. Whatever your thing is. Another boundary that I know I need in my life is around social media. I allow myself 30 minutes of social media time per day. And often, nowadays, I don't even hit that limit. When that time is up though, I'm allowed to do whatever I want as far as leisure goes. I can lay on the couch, I can watch a cooking show, I can prep dinner, take a nap, call a friend, do a hair mask. I think you'll be surprised at just how fun these little boundary challenges can be and how much good can be multiplied in your life from them. Irony of ironies, I have had the hardest time filming this video, just logistically. I don't know if you've noticed, but there is some yard work going on outside. I'm like carrying my computer, it has my script on it that I've written. I'm carrying my camera and the lighting's changing. This video's taking me just way longer to film than I planned. And yeah, I just felt myself getting more and more frustrated. And then finally I thought, oh my gosh, this is the second switch. Just asking yourself, letting your intuition be the guide on how can I let this be easy? And typically I feel like the answer comes to you really quickly, as it just did for me. You might notice my hair is a little different. That's because I just took a quick 15-minute nap. I could have fought it and been really frustrated. That was not the right time for me to just bang out my video. And I actually feel a whole lot better after having just had that little nap. So ask yourself, how can I let this be easy? Whenever you start a new project, whenever you're faced with a challenge, whenever you feel like it's all just so overwhelming, just ask yourself, how can it be easy, and see what comes to you. As women, I really believe that we are just innate creators and that each of us have creative ideas inside us. We are fertile ground for more than just babies. That it's almost painful for our bodies when we are not letting those creative ideas come through us. So the first way that you can work at a more natural pace is to look at your work in your life in a more seasonal approach. Incorporate taking seasons off of things, seasons off of sports, seasons off of extracurriculars. Seasons away from anything is only going to make you more potent and more invigorated for the seasons that you're in them. The focus, by the way, when you are in an off season is play and fun and enjoyment. It's not necessarily in punishing yourself, locking yourself in your house, not seeing anyone, laying in your bed to cry it out. I feel like a lot of us have misconceptions about rest and what it is, because maybe we were like forced to nap when we weren't tired, or I don't know what, but a lot of us have really negative word associations with the word sleep and rest. You can also make your work and your pace more natural by adding in a weekly rest day, intentionally taking one day off every week from forward progress, and again just focusing on fun and play and enjoyment of your life as it is. This habit alone, just the one day off thing, has been so fruitful in my work. But I also want to talk to you about how I incorporate this natural pace of work in a daily rhythm as well. I don't know about you, but it would be so completely unnatural for me to sit at a desk and work all day. I used to try to do this thing where I would like work one day a week and try to just bang out all my work in one day so that I could have all the other days off. I found that to be incredibly draining, and it would take me several days to recuperate from that. But by working in the morning for like an hour, it feels so good to know that whatever my work project is, as excited and passionate about it as I might be, that it's not going to consume my whole day and therefore my whole life. After my hour, or sometimes a little over an hour of work every day in the mornings, I let my brain turn off completely from the projects that I'm working on and kind of just meander in other things, work on other things, high quality leisure, hobbies, spending time with my kids, homeschooling, coming up with new adventures to go on. This is a much more natural pace of work for me than just crushing my work once or twice a week. Even though I feel like for so many of us, that sounds like such an easy life. And my husband actually made the observation recently that I complete a lot more work hours now than I used to. By working an hour or so a day, by the end of 2 weeks, I've worked somewhere between 12 and 13 or so hours. Whereas before, when I would try to just cram it all into once or twice a week, or like whenever I'd have free time or whenever I'd feel that creative spark, it would often feel like a ton of work, but it would be really hard to actually be productive with that time because I felt like I had so much to do, and so that was a gecko running by, and so little time to accomplish it. I just don't think anyone's brain is meant to be focused on producing high quality work for more than about an hour. Working in these smaller spurts makes my work easier to digest and to maintain regularly over time. I think we can trick our brains into thinking we're working so hard when if we zoom out and look at just how much time we're actually spending working, it's actually more of an addiction to this like staying busy, staying stressed than it is to deep work. Working at a more natural pace, I feel like actually invigorates me and inspires me and leads to lots of more creative ideas, because I feel like when your brain has a stopping place and you kind of stop when you're like right in the middle of something good, as crazy as this sounds, turn off actively from that thing, it's like your subconscious keeps chewing on it. So in this way, stop grinding, let your work be easier. Just see how effortlessly your work multiplies because of it. I read the comments lately and I'm just floored at the stories and the insight, and man, I will forever just be in awe of how powerful women are and how deeply committed we are to just continual growth. I think it's beautiful, and I think the more we see it, the more we see it. Even if it's not necessarily true in your friend group right now, I feel like it's closer than you think. And just look at all the women around you in the comments down below. It's really cool to see. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I will see you next week for my next one.